28 days into the war in Ukraine, and there's a big message that's been sent out by Russia that they're not afraid to use their nuclear weapons if the situation or need arises. And this is not the first time this kind of a warning has been put out by Russia. In the course of this conflict, time and again, Russia has made these kind of comments, refusing to rule out the use of nuclear power. This time you had Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov asserting that Russia would use its nuclear weapons in the context of the ongoing war in Ukraine if they believe there was an existential threat to them. This isn't the first time that Putin has hinted at using nuclear power against Ukraine. After Russian troops invaded Ukraine, Putin on February 28th had claimed that he had asked Russia's nuclear forces to be on high alert. Besides that, you also had the developments in Ukraine of Russian troops taking over the premises of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, and attempts were also made immediately to capture Chernobyl power plant, which was then done almost days into that war. I want to take this across to our foreign affairs editor, Geeta Mohan. She's getting us all the updates from Moscow. Geeta, in the course of this conflict that you've been covering in great detail from the ground, we've seen numerous statements being made by Russia. Can this merely be seen as posturing, or is there some truth to these comments by Russia that we're willing to use our nuclear weapons if the need arises?
Well, Akshita, in a clarification by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also Sergei Lavrov's interview, where he had said that should there be a third world war, it would be nuclear. It was put in context saying that Russia is not threatening to go nuclear. Russia is merely saying that should the West escalate matters in Ukraine, that a country that is nuclear, is a nuclear power, and can really go nuclear should there be an escalation. India, Akshita, has had this fear for a very long time with a neighboring country like Pakistan, and a nation that has always worked against India's interests. Similarly, Russia also is a nuclear power, and that certainly is a huge concern for the Western countries, for the West. But Russia over here trying to portray itself as a very responsible nuclear nation. Having said that, we again will have to go back to seeing what they've done in Ukraine and the nuclear plants that are at great risk with this entire conflict that's underway, that's ongoing, and the situation that's ongoing in Ukraine.
Okay, Geeta, request you to stay on with me. We're going to go back to Geeta in just a bit. She's reporting live from Moscow. There's a reason that the world is right now concerned by what's playing out in Ukraine and by these kind of comments being made by Russia with regards to using nuclear weapons. Let's run you through the kind of nuclear arsenal that Russia actually has. Why this could be a huge deterrent that the world is watching right now. Breaking that down for you, the first weapon that in fact Russia has is the Topol-M ICBM. It has a range of 11,000 kilometers. A ballistic missile hasn't been used yet, but Russia's warning is something that has got and caused grave concern across the world because of one of these weapons. The other is Bulava. It's a submarine-launched missile with a range of 8,000 kilometers. We've already been seeing huge deployments along the Black Sea coast also. So this is slowly turning into a naval warfare as well. Then you have the Kinzhal missile. Now, we did tell you here on India Today that the Kinzhal missile was used. It wasn't armed with nukes. It, however, can carry nukes as well. A high-precision weapon. It's got a range of 3,000 kilometers. This is why the world right now is extremely worried because of the nuclear arsenal, the powerful nuclear arsenal that Russia holds. Taking this back across to Geeta Mohan. Geeta, the fact that 28 days into this war, Russia is now coming out with these kind of comments about the use of nuclear weapons. Can this also be construed in a sense as Russia perhaps understanding that, this this conflict is taking a lot of time and they're trying to perhaps send out a message to the world saying don't intervene?
Well, it is certainly a message to the West. This comes at a time when Biden is going to be in the Eastern European countries and there are going to be crucial meetings. Should there be any conversation with regards to forces, even peacekeeping forces, entering Ukraine, that would tantamount to escalation according to Moscow. And any kind of escalation is a warning to the West, would amount to a war. that would be of a nature which could very well go nuclear. While the Russian side has been maintaining that they do not wish to go nuclear on their own, only if there is an escalation and if there is a war, given that all stakeholders are nuclear powers, this could very well become a nuclear war, is what Russia has been saying. Having said that, there are very important statements and negotiations that are underway. President Zelensky, Akshita, has now offered another round of talks at the presidential level. Will Putin really accept that proposal at a time when there are negotiations that are underway? It seems like Putin would only want to go into negotiating with President Zelensky if there is a win-win situation, if there is an agreement and forward movement. And in that, when we speak about a war that could go nuclear, if it goes nuclear, Russia also will be impacted. These are the pros and cons that Moscow will have to weigh in before even acting on going nuclear.
This entire nuclear saber-rattling that Putin and the Russian government is resorting to. On the other hand, there are extremely serious accusations being leveled against Russia of using illegal white phosphorus bombs, particularly in civilian settlements. And this is a huge development if true. This is what reports are suggesting. And remember that phosphorus bombs are actually banned. It's considered illegal by international law. If it is proved and there's evidence that these kind of bombs are being used, Russia is in for a world of trouble.
Amid the raging war in Ukraine, Russia has been pulling out some deadly weapons to target civilians in key cities. In the latest, Russia is accused of launching illegal white phosphorus bombs, which has been banned under international law for use in civilian areas. These white phosphorus bombs, also dubbed as flaming onion bombs, are horrific weapons which can fiercely burn anything that comes its way. This weapon can cause grave injuries as it quickly fires up in the air, spreads over enormous areas up to several hundred kilometers, emanating tremendous heat and poisonous smoke. These white phosphorus bombs also have potential to instantly kill. Russian troops have been accused of using these deadly bombs on civilians in the Donbas region, Popasna in eastern Luhansk region, and in the eastern, claiming to show the alleged attack, but Russia has not reacted to any of these allegations. Bureau Report, India Today.
Entire world against Russia if it's true that they're actually using these phosphorus bombs. Already we've been telling you here on India Today about how Russia is facing a slew of sanctions, particularly from the West. And it's the civilian, the common Russian, who's facing the brunt of these kind of sanctions. We get to our next report from a Russian town called Pokrov, which has run out of basic supplies. Sugar is simply not available. It's sold out. So, several residents in the area that we've spoken to also said that they worry now that many of the basic provisions will just become too expensive for them.
In Pokrov, a town of just 17,000 people 60 miles east of Moscow, Western sanctions are starting to bite. Pokrov local Larissa says the price of sugar and salt is rising. Facing its gravest economic crisis for more than 20 years, Moscow has been telling citizens there is no lack of food and urging them not to panic buy staples. But for some, that's fallen on deaf ears. One resident, Svetlana, purchased more than 20 pounds of sugar in the city of Vladimir, an hour away, to make sure she could preserve the berries she'll collect this summer. She says people are afraid the price will go up. Visiting 4 local stores, Reuters was unable to find any sugar on sale. Shelves where it once sat were empty or filled with other goods. In another sign of the times, a shuttered McDonald's, just one of the dozens of Western firms that has stopped its operations in Russia. Pensioner Antonina says her state pension was enough to cover her basic needs, but she expects to have to change her eating habits. She said she probably won't be able to buy fruit for some time. For Larissa, it's merely the latest setback after many periods of uncertainty.
I was born in Soviet times. Then there was perestroika, then there were the 90s, food stamps. We got over it all.
And let's take this back across to Geeta Mohan. She's joining us live from Moscow. Geeta, as much as Putin claimed that these sanctions will not hurt his country, the reality is that people in Russia, that Russians are struggling right now. They are feeling the pinch. And I'm sure you in Moscow also see it with all of the boycotting of mega brands from Moscow and these sanctions.
Well, Akshita, we were reporting last night as well when we entered Moscow. So from the airport till our hotel, there are a lot of malls, the major brands like you're rightly pointing out, and major food, international food outlets like McDonald's were shut. But life does not look like out of ordinary or not normal over here in Moscow. People are going about their lives, doing their things. It's only when you go to a store you realize that there are difficulties. How? Banks and cards are not working. So everybody has to carry cash. Now, cash can be, there is a cash crunch in the country. We ourselves, when we're traveling, we're told very specifically that the cards will not work. So we have also made arrangements. Accordingly, people over here are feeling the stress of not being able to work, like the regular financial systems, banking systems are not at work and are not working, are not functional. And that certainly is creating a lot of constraints. But if you see Moscow as a city and people over here, it does not feel like this is a country that is at war, or this is a country that is carrying on operations and sending forces across the border into Ukraine. They are going about their work. The work hasn't stopped. So for people over here to really feel the impact of and the stress of the global economic impact on Russia might take a while. But yes, in a micro level, they are feeling the stress with the banking institutions not working.
Okay, Geeta, we're going to keep coming across to you for all those updates that you're tracking from Moscow. For the moment, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Away from what's playing out in Russia, 28 days of the war, let's tell you what's happening right now in the war-torn country of Ukraine. Russia perhaps is hoping that almost 4 weeks into this conflict, they'd have gained control of the big cities. But Ukrainians are fighting back. Ukraine troops were able to gain control over the strategically important suburb region of its capital, Kyiv, which has been bruised and battered by Russian pounding in this 4-week-long war so far. A 35-hour-long curfew has also been imposed in the Ukrainian capital. Putin's army also shelled multiple buildings in Kyiv's Obolon district. The embattled port city of Mariupol continues to reel under Russian strikes again, another city that refuses to surrender as Ukrainian troops are staying put and they're continuing to fight back. Similar story that's playing out in Kharkiv, in Mykolaiv. Kherson, which has already been taken over by Russia, is also seeing civilians putting up a fight and protesting against Putin. Relentless Russian bombardment has left a trail of devastation in the cities. Kremlin's ground offensive is particularly targeting residential buildings now. Yes, Ukrainians are showing remarkable resilience. They've slowed down the Russian advancement, but so far they haven't been able to stop them completely.
Продовжуємо працювати на різних рівнях і заради того, щоб спонукати Росію до миру, до припинення цієї жорстокої війни. Працюють українські представники в переговорах, які продовжуються фактично щоденно. Складно, дуже, часом скандально, але крок за кроком йдемо вперед.
Now, I mentioned what the current situation is in the city of Kherson. It's reportedly been taken over by Russia, and yet civilians there have made it very clear that they're not going to bow down before Putin. They came together at the Freedom Square of Kherson to stage a protest. It was a peaceful protest until Russian troops indiscriminately opened fire upon these civilians.
4 devastating weeks of Russia's relentless air attacks. Ukraine bleeding. Destruction and devastation in besieged southern city of Kherson. Residential buildings, once bustling with lives, lying in ruins. Bruised and battered with relentless Russian attacks, civilians in Kherson are continuing to fight back. Showing unprecedented resilience, civilians in Kherson hit streets, protesting against the invaders. Only to be fired at with automatic weapons by invading enemy troops. Gunfire renting the air and smoke filling the scene as civilian protesters ran for cover to escape volleys of gunfire. Images showed explosions triggered possibly by stun grenades.
It is reported that protesters were protesting today against the Russian occupation in the Independence Square of Kherson city. When they were protesting, when the peaceful march was being taken out in the Freedom Square in Kherson city, it is reported that Russian troops have fired on these protesters, peaceful protesters, and have used stun grenades to disperse them. A lot of people have been injured, and there are reports that people might have even died, though none of these figures have been confirmed or verified by any of the authorities so far.
To Kherson, where we saw slaves shooting at free people, slaves of propaganda that replaces their consciousness. 40 million Ukrainians of our state, millions and millions of Ukrainians in the world, we have all seen you stand. We have seen who you are.
Protesting Kherson residents had managed to force Russian tanks to go back earlier. The Russian army had removed the Ukrainian flag from the city administration building days ago, amid heavy resistance from the citizens. The city of Kherson, a regional capital of about 2.5 lakh, was the first big urban center to fall into the hands of Russian troops after they invaded Ukraine on February 24th. But pockets of resistance still continue against the occupation forces. With Rajesh Pawar in Ukraine war zone, Bureau Report, India Today.